As we continue under old business, consideration and action on ordinance to amend the City Code of Ethics procedure for filing complaints and determining a cognizable claim. Do I have a motion? This is a public hearing, and if anybody has any comments, please approach the podium. I see no public comment. Now I ask for a motion. Do I have a motion?
Madam Chair, I'll make that motion.
Motion by Councilman Howard.
Let me read this.
Please.
I make the motion to approve the ordinance as presented in writing by the City Attorney to amend the Code of Ordinance Section 3-52 of the City of Snellville to adopt a new ordinance for preliminary review of the legitimacy of a claim of violating the City of Snellville Code of Ethics, repeal of conflicting ordinances, and for other purposes.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Council Emanuel. All in favor? Oh, discussion. Sorry. Mr. Sabah.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We discussed this a little bit in the work session, but just to repeat some of my thoughts, having a code of ethics in the city is pretty important and something I support. This quick change, this is in my opinion a pretty quick change that will resolve situations on a short horizon, but however will not resolve, again, it's my own opinion, will not resolve situations in the longer term. We may not have the same city attorney. In the past 5-6 years we've had 3 city managers, and they all don't operate the same way. So we may not have the city manager forever to be able to have these complaints seen by him or her. I asked the city attorney to maybe expand a little bit on this cognizable claim that we can review in the future. And I don't have anything to look at besides the couple of paragraphs that we have right here. Therefore, I may not be consciously able to support this tonight.
And just to answer Mr. Sabah's inquiry, this ordinance is affiliated with a good bit of legal work for the city. Several months ago, a claim was filed under your Code of Ethics against Councilmember Witts, and when you looked at it was a very large expanse of documents, over 230 pages of documents that were filed as an ethics complaint without definition. It was readily apparent to me that it was frivolous. It had no basis as an ethics complaint. And so we requested of the City Council that they allow us to pursue this to establish standards where frivolous complaints could be summarily dismissed. And that particular action could be summarily dismissed. Now, the code section that's sought to be approved in the motion that has been made really just sets up a preliminary hearing process where it would be sent to the city manager and the city attorney to investigate the claim, require that the legal issues of your code of ethics, which you are a certified city of ethics according to the Georgia Municipal Association. Based on their standard, you would compare the code section to the facts of the case to determine if there's really a code violation of the ethics code. Normally, ethics codes stand out. You know, somebody's taking money from the city improperly. These provisions apply not just to the elected officials, but it's a standard of proper behavior that is a significant violation. It's not supposed to be used as a political tool. And unfortunately, throughout Georgia, this preliminary review process has been overlooked, and you see a lot of complaints getting filed for just purely political motivation. In this case, Mr. Anderson has recently signed off on a consent order, which we showed last week, and we approved a settlement. And in that, Mr. Anderson announced to the court that he wanted to apologize to the city. And to respond to Mr. Witts and Mr. Emanuel, he stipulated to the court that he did not have a basis to file an ethics complaint and would enter into a written letter of apology under such terms as the petitioner and the court thought were appropriate. And Mr. Anderson went on to actually apologize for his statements and what he said concerning Mr. Witts, to the point of, and he really wanted us to make that clear, that not only did he admit that it was a frivolous complaint, but he also requested that if anybody had interpreted his statements to be disparaging to Mr. Witts, that he was withdrawing those statements. So it was a very thorough and very kind apology. The problem is, once you get to the point where you have hearings on this of this nature, the damage is done to the person who is absolutely innocent. And so what this procedure that's before the council tonight does is it eliminates frivolous claims from getting that kind of publicity and coverage and forefront when it's obvious from the very beginning it was simply politically motivated speech. Now it's not an attempt to stop that speech or to stop ethics complaints. There was an appellate process where ethics complaints can then go to the Superior Court to determine if there's viability. So if city manager or city attorney get it wrong and it's cognizable, then the Superior Court can send it back and the mayor and council hear that complaint. If the mayor and council decided over the ruling of the city manager and the city attorney to hear it, they certainly are authorized to do that. So it's not intended to stop proper pursuit of valid claims, but it is a gatekeeper to stop what you see all over the state. And we hope that because of the work that Snellville's done, because of their courage to stand up and say enough of politically motivated ethics complaints, that other regions of this state will be able to do the same thing, and elected officials and city employees can then be judged on these good standards that the GMA has set down for us in comparison to it just being really abused as political speech. So that's really the purpose of it. That was the intent. It was very brave of the council to take the fight on, and they've to me the results of this is an affirmation that Snellville's a step ahead of everybody.
Okay. Well, I'm going to certainly support this action. I believe that as our city attorney just pointed out, I think we have taken a bold move, and I think we need to be heads above, where we were with regard to not having anything. And the idea that people can march in and just do what they want to do with what they want to say, I think it really calls to task, and I think we have to stop that. But I guess the suggestion that any future city attorney or city manager would not hold the best interest of this city, in their best interest, I'm somewhat surprised at hearing that. So I do believe the process would be fair and impartial. It doesn't take away the ability for someone that truly believes to do what they want to do to be able to have that. But it does set in place a standard that we haven't had before. And I quite frankly, I like the high standard. I'm okay with that. As I sit here, I'm not capable of reading into the future or reading minds, so I don't know what's going to happen in the future. I just know that if we don't do something, we will experience what we've experienced from Rome, Georgia again. And I think that we need to put an end to it. And I think this is a great first step in doing that. So I certainly will support this tonight without any equivocation at all.
I'm going to support this as well. Excuse me. Frankly, I'm surprised Mr. Sabah is not going to support it because there is an outstanding ethics complaint against him. that probably would not have passed muster. It has to do with his appearing before the Marietta City Council, threatening them with Al Jazeera and using his position for possibly the benefit of somebody else. Now, that is not an ethics violation, and it has been brought before the city, and I think had this protocol been put in place prior to that, it never would have gotten that far, and it's still an open matter. So I think regardless of who is the subject of this, these ethics complaints need to be fair. They need to speak to the ordinance. And if you read the ordinance, the only thing the ethics ordinance deals with is money and people profiting from it, using it incorrectly for their own benefit or somebody else's benefits. Now, as far as ethical conduct, that's a whole different situation. But when you read the ethics ordinance, it has to do, as Attorney Powell said, basically with stealing in one form or another. And the problem you get into is people use that and they say, well, you didn't do this, you didn't do that, ethically, make a big deal out of it. And what frivolous means in this case is it doesn't speak to the law, doesn't speak to the ordinance. And it seems to me that it's a pretty straightforward situation where certainly as any city attorney is capable of looking at the ordinance and looking at a complaint and saying, yes, this passes muster. This is a complaint about a specific part of the ordinance, as opposed to he said something I don't like, or he shouldn't have done this, or he shouldn't have done that. And I think we need something like this in place. I think this is the best way to do it. I don't care who you have as a city attorney or as a city manager, they should be ethical enough to look at the complaint, look at the ordinance, put the two together and find out whether it is a valid complaint or not. So I'm going to support this, and I think we'll see a lot of improvement and a lot less use of ethics complaints as just political speech.
At this time, I'll call the question. All in favor of the consideration and action on the ordinance? Raise your right hand. Opposed? That's 3-1. Motion carries. Consideration and action on approval to send the 2014-2019 short-term work program update to the Atlanta Regional Commission for review. Normally we'd look at this and waive it for first reading, but I would like Mr. Davis to come up and do a short talk. Sorry.
That's quite all right. The state of Georgia changed the planning regulations with the Department of Community Affairs this year, and as part of that, when it came time for us to begin to renew our short-term work program, we were told that before January the 1st we could either renew our short-term work program or we could do a new comp plan. Doing a new comp plan between now and January the 1st is not even something we want to think about discussing. So we adopted at staff level to go to a new 5-year work program. We took our 2013 work program, edited out those projects that have been accomplished, those projects that are ongoing, and those projects that we have decided as a city not to pursue. That shortened the list down considerably, and you have in your packet the status list is the first part, and it goes through each item on the 2013 short-term work program and gives you the status and where we are on that. And then we attached a 2014 to 2019 short-term work program, which takes those elements of our current program that we are still working upon and expands them out over the next 5 years to complete that work. We did not essentially add any new projects at this time, but this is an editable document which we can add if we wish. And we asked for the council first to waive the first reading and then adopt this at the second reading at the next council meeting so that we can send it to DCA to receive their approval so that we can then adopt it as a city. Without this document adopted, we would no longer be a qualified local government, which would make us us ineligible for state, federal grants.
Thank
Any
you, Mr. Davis. Any questions? Do I have a motion?
Motion to waive first read.
All in favor?
Second.
Oh. Second by Mr. Manuel. Now, all in favor, raise your right hand. 4-0. No opposed. Thank you. Okay, I think I finished with the regular agenda. I thank you very much for your patience. Now we'll go to council reports.